5 things that would make me feel good about this Raiders upcoming draft class. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 17th, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're giving us a look on YouTube, we appreciate that. Show grows each and every day. That's because of you and your commitment to the show, so we appreciate that. And speaking of commitment, my man Ari has a commitment to making sure we look good, we sound good, we're doing what we're supposed to do on YouTube each and every day. So shout him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. As we do on the regular, have a ton of calls and texts that we want to get to, so we'll do as many as possible. Coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, I want to talk about five different things, 5 different subjects, 5 little bullet points that'll make me feel good about this Raiders upcoming NFL draft class. Like when I wake up on Monday or wake up on Sunday morning after the draft is all said and done, how I'll be feeling and why I'll be feeling good if these things do happen. That'll all come up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes, and really just hear from a couple of NFL insiders, all things NFL draft related when it comes to quarterbacks, some silver and black conversation, and a little bit more. We'll get right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidate you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Off top, Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback, SI.com, does a fantastic job. Put out the tweet on Tuesday night that the Commanders kicked off their mass 30 visit tonight by taking the draft prospects, including Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, and J.J. McCarthy to Topgolf for a casual dinner mixer. More than 20 potential draftees in town. They'll be at the facility tomorrow. So that's the top quarterbacks right there. Outside of Caleb Williams, we all know Caleb Williams is a done deal records. He's on his way to the Chicago Bears. But Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, all in D.C. at the same time, meeting with the Commanders. So I found that to be pretty interesting. And so when I was doing my radio show on Tuesday, I had Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda.com on the show, and we talked about multiple different subjects, and one of them, I brought up that tweet from Albert Breer about all those quarterbacks being in the mix. So the first question I asked Pauline was, does that mean that the Commanders, who are hosting all those quarterbacks, are still unsure of who they're taking, even though it's a handful of days away from the start of the NFL draft?
No, I think it would be the third one is they got to check all the boxes. I mean, if you are the Commanders or you are the Patriots or another team at the top of the draft, and you're going to select a quarterback, you don't want to miss because it's not like a receiver where it could be made up for in another area. You want to make sure that you hit on this selection and that quarterback will be your face of the franchise for the next 10 to 12 years. So basically what they're going to do is I understand it. I would agree with it because it's such an important it's going to be such an important selection for these teams. The Commanders, brand new owner, brand new regime in the front office. The Patriots, sort of a new regime in the front office on the field coaching, and an owner that's used to winning. They don't want to miss. So you're going to call all these quarterbacks in. You're going to do a lot of X's and O's with them. You're going to grill them, as far as psychologically. You're going to see if they are the team leader that you want, the face of your franchise moving forward. I think it's a good move by these teams to bring all the quarterbacks in.
So there's Tony Pauline's answer on just what the Commanders are doing, checking all the boxes. And interesting approach, right? I kind of feel like it's almost a, keep you guessing type thing for the rest of the league. Like, hey, I know you think that we're taking Jaden Daniels, but maybe we're taking Drake May. Maybe we're taking J.J. McCarthy. Maybe we'll go in a different direction. And that's why we have all these guys in at the same time. But again, Tony Pauline, Sportskeeda.com, let it be known that, hey, that's just really them checking their boxes and trying to make sure that they make the right decision. Well, I had him on to ask a couple other questions, draft related and also Raider related. And the first one was about a report that was out over the weekend. And I had people hit me up saying, hey, is this real? Is this fake? What's going on? And it was a report that was taken from a report that Tony Pauline had put out. And basically, he was saying that there's a difference in opinion right now between Tom Telesco, the GM of the Raiders, and Antonio Pierce, the head coach, about what they want to do with their first pick, which is number 13 overall, what they want to do with their first round pick. But the report that came out made it sound like there's some big riff, that they're at each other's throats, they're not really happy with each other, like they really embellished it. And so I kind of felt like that over the weekend, that's what it was. But I reached out to Tony on Saturday and was like, hey man, can you come on my radio show to kind of clear the air? And he's like, I can't do it Monday, but I got you on Tuesday. So he did hop on the show on Tuesday, and I asked him about that question, the difference of opinion going on right now between Tom Telesco, the GM, and head coach Antonio Pierce.
Well, the head coach Antonio Pierce, who's been there for, was there for a while and was the head coach of the team, feels that they need to improve the quarterback position, and he wants to move up and get a quarterback. Now you've got Tom Telesco, who I think understands the amount of draft capital that it's going to take for the Raiders to move up and get a quarterback, and he's very hesitant. They signed Gardner Minshew in free agency, who's a journeyman type of signal caller. He's not your answer. They got Aiden O'Connell there, and rather than give up the massive amount of draft capital that would be needed to move up, I think Telesco's basically saying, let's see what we got. Maybe we'll get a quarterback later on, rather than giving up all these picks to get one of these guys, which I think is going to be, if not virtually impossible, nearly impossible for a variety of reasons. Number one, the two teams selecting right in front of the Raiders, the Denver Broncos and the Minnesota Vikings, also want to trade up to get a quarterback. The Giants may want to trade up a few slots to get a quarterback. I think that's lesser of a possibility than Minnesota or Denver wanting to trade up. And then, how far down do the Arizona Cardinals really want to move? I mean, if they move further than the 11th pick of the draft, they're probably going to lock themselves out of one of the pass catchers, whether it be the top three receivers or Brock Bowers, the tight end. So I think it's going to be very tough for the Raiders to move up and get a quarterback, and it's going to take just a boatload of draft capital. And when you look at the history of teams that have given away tons and tons of draft capital to move up and get a quarterback, it's not good. It usually doesn't work out.
So it wasn't really a big deal, but these different outlets and folks on Twitter, and I mean like these different algorithms, these outlets that try to create more traffic on Twitter are really trying to blow it up and make it seem like it was a bigger deal. So I doubled down and said, hey, well, let me know about the dynamic between Tom Telesco and AP. With Telesco having the experience and AP just dipping his toes into the head coaching pool, what's the kind of balance between each other?
I think they complement each other well. I think Antonio Pierce brings great intensity. I think he brings a winning culture. I think he brings a mindset that a team needs on the field, which Telesco kind of lacks. But Telesco's done a solid job overall, I believe, in his drafts with the Charger organization. There was some consideration that they were going to keep him there when they went after Jim Harbaugh. Telesco was out because Harbaugh was going to run the whole show. So I think they complement each other very well.
So I thought that was pretty positive, and you can hear Tony Pauline again from sportskeeda.com was pretty positive about, the balance between the GM and the head coach and what Tom Telesco was able to do and how they really kind of complement each other, and thought that they complemented each other really well. The final soundbite I want you to hear from Tony Pauline from my radio show on Tuesday is just about Penix and Nix. I just basically boiled it down, was like, hey, all right, well, this is the deal, Tony. If the Raiders stick and pick at 13, they let the board fall to them. Probably Penix and Nix will both be available there. What do you think of them as first-round quarterbacks, and what do you think about the Raiders selecting one of the two guys, if they so choose to, at number 13?
Yeah, they will be there. I think anything before the late part of round one for either of those quarterbacks is a bit of a reach. So, I mean, the alternative would be to trade down and take maybe Penix later on. I mean, there are two different types of quarterbacks. In Penix, you have a guy who's, of the top quarterbacks in this draft, is probably the best vertical thrower. He's got a big-time arm. He makes some magnificent passes down the field, but his streakiness is a major concern. People talk about, well, I watched all the cut-ups of Michael Penix throws, which I think misses the mark because you got to watch the flow of the game, and he's very streaky. You don't know what you're getting. Sometimes one offensive series to the next, you don't know what you're getting quarter from quarter with Michael Penix. There's also the age, and there's also the injuries, which are a factor because it means that he's probably hit the utmost physical limits that he's not going to get all that much better. Bo Nix doesn't have those physical skills of Michael Penix. He's a very intellectual, thinking man's quarterback, does a great job running the offense, uses all his weapons, does a great job protecting the football, but he's more of a game manager, more of a timing passer. And while there is, the need for that in the NFL, and that can, goes well in the NFL, I just don't think you take that type of quarterback in the first 20 and 25 selections of the draft. I wouldn't take him in the first round myself.
So you hear what Tony Pauline said right there. Bo Nix, he says he wouldn't select in the first round. Penix, I think he can talk himself into it, at the later back end. But again, two guys that he feels very comfortable will be there sitting at number 13. Of course, it's been the debate all draft season long is really where are these quarterbacks going to go? We know Caleb Williams, we know Jaden Daniels and Drake May are all going to get selected early. J.J. McCarthy is going to be, the big storyline going into next week's draft. And then you've got Michael Penix, you've got Bo Nix. What's going to happen with those guys? Are they first round QBs or are they second round QBs? And speaking of Michael Penix, I got one more soundbite for you before we get into segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. And this comes from our good friend Ari Mayrob from the 33team.com. He just really broke it down, does a fantastic job on that website. I always encourage everyone to go check it out. But he broke it down and talked about really the scouts' approach to Michael Penix, coaches' approaches to Michael Penix, and how that could be a difference of opinion coming up in next week's draft. Check it out.
One of the more intriguing draft questions as we near next week is, will Michael Penix go in the first round on Thursday night? And people are going to bring up all the negatives, especially the medical, where he had 4 consecutive years at Indiana with season-ending injuries, 2 torn ACLs, shoulder surgery, some other stuff as well. And on top of that, he is a bit older. He'll be a 24-year-old rookie quarterback, and scouts especially and some executives will bring up that he does miss some easy layups, quote unquote, when you watch his tape. But there are so many positives with him as well, and it all starts with his deep ball, which down the field Penix is an A+. Like, he was the best deep ball thrower, the most accurate deep ball thrower in college year. He throws such a tight spiral. He ran a 4.5 at his pro day, which was a huge plus considering the knee injuries over the last several years for him while he was at Indiana. And on top of that, his mental toughness is second to none. And there are coaches who see all of this and are like, the stuff that he does have is the stuff that are the toughest things to teach quarterbacks, and the stuff that we need to work on are stuff that we really believe we could fix with him if he comes to our building and we get to sit around him for a couple of games or maybe even a full season. And that's why, if there is going to be a 5th quarterback who goes in the first, many people believe there will be coaches around the NFL who are going to bang the table for Michael Penix Jr. And I look at teams like the Raiders, who have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, a team like the Rams, who have Matthew Stafford, who's getting up there in age, with a head coach in Sean McVay, who is there for the long run now. After considering going to TV a couple of years, he wants to be there for the future. They need the heir apparent to Matthew Stafford. Look at a team like the Seahawks, who have Geno Smith on a year-to-year contract. His former offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb at Washington, he is the new Seahawks offensive coordinator. Even a team like the Giants, who have Daniel Jones, maybe trading up from the second round to go and try to get a Michael Penix Jr. Coaches look at Michael Penix Jr. far differently than some scouts and executives do. And if there are teams around the league who have coaches who have power over some people in the front office, I could see a scenario where Michael Penix does go in the first round on Thursday night, and possibly to a team that nobody's really talking about.
So there's Ari Mayrob right there from the 33team.com, just breaking it down and just talking about the difference of opinions when it comes to Michael Penix. And this is not from fans. This is from coaches, scouts, right? I mean, talent evaluators, everyone just kind of has a different opinion on Penix. So he's going to be one of the bigger storylines in next week's drafts. Exactly who's going to, come through. Is it going to be a coach that's going to select him because they overrule the GM? Or is it going to be a GM that says, yeah, you know what? He's not a first round guy. We'll wait to select him a little bit later. One of the bigger storylines. J.J. McCarthy is going to be a big storyline. I believe Michael Penix Jr. is going to be a big storyline. Of course, he's been a conversation of a lot of Raider Nation. I'm not trying to influence you one way or the other who you want, what quarterback you like the Raiders to select. It's again, I say it all the time. It's a matter of what Kool-Aid you prefer. Some prefer the Kool-Aid that is Michael Penix. Some don't. And it's just as simple as that. Coming up in segment number 2, what do I want to see the Raiders do with this draft in general? I got 5 things I'd like to break down, little 5 bullet points that I have. I touched on it on my radio show on Tuesday. I'll expand on it a little bit coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get into that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, make the process even easier and even quicker. That's what they like to do. 2.5 million small businesses owners use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free right now at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 with today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about the draft, and obviously we've been talking about the draft, till we're blue in the face, right? And we've really broke it down. We've dissected it. We've talked about the expectations of it, what we want from it. But I want to take it a little bit further when it comes to what we want from the draft. And I phrased it on Raider Nation Radio 920, Unnecessary Roughness, my radio show, as, in your opinion, what would it take for the Raiders to get a passing grade in this year's draft? I kind of put it like that, but I want to expand on that just a little bit further. And as I was sitting around thinking about it, it really was about 5 different little bullet points that I had as I start going through the history of, the Raiders drafts in my mind and what I think after some of the picks that we've heard over the years, and especially over the last handful of years from, Reggie McKenzie, John Gruden and Mike Mayock, right? Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels. Now an opportunity under Tom Telesco and on Antonio Pierce. So, again, just kind of thinking about what I valued without talking about the players that I valued. And, I got a lot of great feedback on my radio show as well from Raider Nation. I always love to hear from Raider Nation as well, because a lot of times you'll hear, an answer or a thought that might not be the thought that I had and worded in a different way. That makes a lot of sense. As a matter of fact, I actually used one of the calls that we got on this show from, I believe it was Tuesday, and I kind of, paraphrased it on my radio show and was like, yeah, that actually made a lot of sense and had me thinking about the topic that I'm bringing to the table today. So when I look at the draft starting next week on Thursday, live from Detroit, where I'll be very excited about the opportunity, I got 5 bullet points, I should say, that I had takeaways that I thought that the Raiders need to employ. The first one, I think, is real simple. Just makes sense. Like, have the picks make sense, right? When the pick at 13 or wherever it is in round 1, just make it make sense. Don't let it be something from out of left field that you're wondering, like, wait, hold on, why was that player selected? Why was that position addressed? That wasn't something that needed to be addressed, or that wasn't something that's going to help impact this team or, look into the future. It just, again, the picks have to make sense. And I think that should be a no-brainer. That should be the goal of every team, right? But there's been times when we looked at some drafts that the Raiders have had where the picks haven't really necessarily made any sense. And also, kind of to go along with that, one of the points that I have is no reaches, no head scratchers. They kind of play, hand in hand, right? Makes sense. Don't let me wondering, like, wait, hold on. Leatherwood? 17? Wait, what? Or Arnett? Wait, hold on. Who the hell is that? From Ohio State? No, Jeffrey Okudah already went off the board. Wait, Arnett? Isn't that the guy that almost quit football and had to be convinced to get back to play? Like, don't make me question myself, right? I mean, especially Damon Arnett is one that stands out to me in such a major way, because I honestly, Raider Nation, thought that I just missed on somebody. And for a guy like me who always talks about defensive backs, I was like, wait, hold on. How did I miss on that defensive back? There must be something that was real. I mean, he was flying under the radar, and man, Gruden and Mayock must have hit on one that's just going to be a home run. And they got me excited about one to see what Arnett was going to do. Because I just knew that if you're picking this guy in the top 20, you must know something that nobody else know. Like, I was really giving them the benefit of the doubt. And then, well, we saw what the history of Damon Arnett turned into. So then I realized that, oh, no, I wasn't wrong. They were. So that's the head scratcher. That's the reach, super reach. Alex Leatherwood, no doubt about it. I mean, you could even go back to, all the former first rounds that they had, even, Klee and Abram. Unfortunately, again, Klee I thought was a hell of a player, just picked way too high. That wasn't his fault. Abram, I never really understood that one. I was excited about it because I thought that, well, with his, energy, the hard hitter that he is, maybe, again, giving him the benefit of the doubt, maybe they, know something that we don't know. And also this dude's going to be an enforcer on the back end of the Raiders defense. Like, again, not trying to bash any of these guys without giving them a chance. So I thought, okay, well, maybe they're onto something. No, they weren't. Right, the only first-round pick that really was worth the salt was Josh Jacobs, and that's unfortunate. We know what happened with Henry Ruggs. Don't have to rehash that conversation there. But, again, I mean, having all those first-round picks and really to have nothing to show for it right now is a shame. It really is. And so, again, no reaches, no head scratchers. Make the picks make sense. Whether that's staying there at 13, attacking the trenches like Tom Telesco has normally done, and he does a fantastic job with that. He's not a guy that's going to trade back, or at least his history doesn't show that he's going to trade back. He's not a guy that routinely trades up, and when he does trade up, it hasn't been real high, like a lot of Raider Nation, including myself, would like to see him do at number 2. And some might think that doesn't make sense. You might tell me now, hey, you know what? Trading up from 13 to 2 doesn't make sense. You're giving up too much draft capital. And I can understand that. I can understand where you're coming from. So to you, that might not make sense. To me, I think it's getting alpha dog quarterback if they can do it. But again, it just does not look like there's going to be a chance for them to do that. Also, another element to this is fill holes and needs. Right? I mean, I know we always talk about best player available. And I always say it's best player available and, position to need holes on the team. We all know what they are. We all know what needs to be addressed. Right tackle needs to be addressed. Cornerback, in my opinion, needs to be addressed. And quarterback needs to be addressed. Right? I mean, there's other areas of the team that definitely need to be addressed, but those are needs. Those are something that have been needs, obvious needs, since day one of this whole draft season. Since the season got wrapped up, I think we all kind of knew what time it was. And some will argue that quarterback is not a need because there's 2 quarterbacks that can get it done on the roster right now, and Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. And that's fine. If that's how you believe, I'm good with it, right? For me and my money, I think quarterback is definitely a need. But again, you can convince me otherwise. And I do know that those 2 dudes that are in the locker room right now have experience and could go out there and win games. So if the Raiders, as I've mentioned 1,000 times, have to play a game on Sunday, which they don't, but if they do, they can go out, they can field a team, and they can win a game. I also want them to have a vision on the future. And what do I mean by that is, have some guys that could be big-time players later. And my example is, like, I have a guy, Sir Whiskey Ray, who calls into my radio show all the time, and he's pounding the table for Byron Murphy. And to me, that's a luxury because you just signed Christian Wilkins for big money. You brought back John Jenkins. You have Adam Butler. You have Byron Young from a year ago, 3rd-round pick out of Alabama, who really didn't get any burn. You have guys in that defensive tackle room. But let's just say that Tom Telesco decided Byron Murphy is the best player available, and the defensive tackle position is so highly coveted now around the league. We're going to go out there and draft him. The offensive line feel like that class is a little bit deeper, so we can go get our tackle later. We don't like any of the quarterbacks right now, and we feel like the cornerback room is pretty deep right now as far as this upcoming draft. So let's just go get that bloodthirsty pirate named Byron Murphy out of the University of Texas. If they were to do that, that would be a pick that makes sense to me. I wouldn't feel like that's a reach or a head scratcher. I feel like it's fills a hole in a need, but not right now. That would be where the vision on the future comes into play, right? I mean, again, John Jenkins, Adam Butler, those guys are on 1-year deals. Now all of a sudden you've got Christian Wilkins on this 4-year deal as a free agent for big money. Then you get this young bull, this young stud in Byron Murphy. You got those 2 guys next to each other for a while, and Murphy could be your young dude. Just like when the Raiders went and drafted Darrell Russell with the expectations that he was going to be that guy for years to come, and rest in peace to Darrell Russell, but he could have been that dude. Byron Murphy could be that guy, so he might not have the huge impact this year, but all of a sudden you look forward and he has a huge impact. And now you think about Crosby, you think about Murphy, you think about Kuntz that's coming around, Tyree Wilson, who was just drafted, and then that's a very young defensive line, not just defensive tackle room, but a young defensive line. And then, oh, by the way, Christian Wilkins is still there on a free agent deal, and you feel pretty good about 2, maybe even 3 years of that deal, and then probably, either restructure or move on or whatever the case may be. But you have youth there that you feel really comfortable that this defense can grow around for years to come. So that's the vision on the future I'm talking about. So if they were to make a move, if we go into Friday, right after the draft, after the first round's out, and I'm on this show right here talking about Byron Murphy as the first round pick at 13, I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't get angry about it. I would say, okay, you know what? That defense that was already full of bloodthirsty Pirates is now even that much thirstier. Those Pirates are that much more bloodthirsty, right? And it just got that much better with the addition of Byron Murphy. Now, again, not the number one priority, not a guy that I look like he's going to go play and make a huge impact, day one. But again, that's that vision on the future. And the last point that I have for the 5, little bullet points that I'm looking for the Raiders to come out of the draft with, impact players. At the end of the day, just get some impact players. Get some guys that can contribute early and make an impact. And I don't care if you get it at the corner position. I don't care, as I just went on a long rant about the defensive tackle position. If it's an offensive tackle that can start immediately, shore up that right side of the offensive line, fantastic, right? If you can get an impact player maybe in the 3rd or 4th round, that's a wide receiver that can contribute, right? I mean, you have Devontae, you have Jacoby Myers, but, if you can get another guy, and that would also be vision on the future as well. Devontae's not going to be around forever. Jacoby's on a free agent deal, so adding another wide receiver to the mix wouldn't be a problem, right? I think in the 4th round, you could also look at another running back, a young dude, and you could probably start to cycle those guys in almost each and every year, right? You start targeting running backs in the 4th round, right? You have Zamir White, you have Alexander Madison. All of a sudden, you go and you add a guy like a Blake Corum from Michigan, if that's the case, the direction that you want to go, or any of these running backs that you think can be really cool. Marshawn, not Marshawn. Every time I say Marshawn, I think of Marshawn Lynch, but the young man from USC, Marshawn Lloyd, by way of South Carolina, a guy like that, right? Those guys could be had in the 4th round. So not only can they be guys that can help out in the running back rotation this year, but again, going back to the vision on the future, they could be that as well. And they could be some impact players. They can complement Zamir White. They can complement an Alexander Madison. And you have some plenty of youth along that Raiders team. At the end of the day, when the 3 days from Detroit are up and done and we're recapping the whole draft on Monday, I'm just hoping that I'm not scratching my head wondering what the hell happened. Like the Leatherwood and Trayvon Merrick, when Leatherwood went in round 1, Merrick went out round 2, I said, well, at least I feel better that they got Merrick, who was a guy that people were talking about, a 1st-round pick, and Leatherwood probably should have been a 2nd-round pick at best. Well, the fact that Leatherwood's barely even in the league still makes it even that much worse, right? So, I mean, that was one. And, again, I'm a guy, as many people know, I yell Roll Tide all the time. I'm an Alabama fan. I love watching Alabama football. Have no ties to them. Didn't go there. Don't know anybody who went there, right? But just like watching the product that is. And even when I question the Leatherwood, and I'm telling you right now, I'm actually questioning J.C. Latham. I'm not 100% sold on him either, even though Paul Gutierrez from ESPN picked him number 13 overall in our ultimate mock draft that we're putting together on Raider Nation Radio 920. I'm not sold on Latham because of the penalties that he had at college and the fact that he got banged up quite a bit as well. And as Matt Miller pointed out on ESPN when I had him on my radio show, he said, Q, when's the last time a big-time tackle from Alabama actually panned out in the NFL? It was one of those things that made me say, again. And a 3rd time, right? I mean, because not really wrong, right? And, of course, we all have memories of one Alex Leatherwood, but don't want to put that on J.C. Latham. He's got an opportunity to write his own story. I just wasn't a big fan of his, and just because of those penalties, it really kind of bothers me. But that's what I'm looking for from the Raiders in this draft. Make sense with the picks, no reaches and head scratchers, fill holes and needs, have a vision on the future as well, and then get impact players and early contributors. First and foremost, most important element right there, impact players and early contributors. That's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. What's on your mind? Your calls and texts are coming up next as we close out the show in segment number 3, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about Monopoly Go. And I've been told many times that I'm a very competitive person. And guess what? They're right. I am about as competitive as it gets. I want to win at anything, and I want to win at everything. I got mad the other day when I was on a show that on our sister station, ESPN Las Vegas, and it was a debate show, and I tied. Like, how in the world did we tie? how do you tie on a show? Like, someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. I walked into my boss's office complaining about tying. My boss said, Q, I think you're going to need this cookie right now and relax with your competitiveness. And I mean, I was ready to turn it into a red polo day. I was so hot because I always want to win. I've got that competitive side, and that's just me. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly. You could play on, but not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards, crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part is messing with your friends. I could charge them rent on my properties that I have, my iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly. I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself, and who doesn't want to take someone else's money, right? Especially when they're your friends. Take your friends' money. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is, which is just going to be me. So it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You could team up with your friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. Get in the game right now. Join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Went a little long there in segment number 2, so we'll go ahead and keep it a little short here in segment number 3. We'll start off with a call from Darren from the 203. He's calling to talk about the quarterback room in general as it pertains to J.J. McCarthy. Here he is, Darren from the 203.
Hey, Q, how's it going? It's Darren calling in from the 203. Just quick comment about quarterback, mostly J.J. McCarthy. It's not even much about J.J. McCarthy, more about the Raiders quarterback room. And it's just like a thought thing. Do we think that J.J. McCarthy is all that much better than Gardner Minshew is? Like, you know, yeah, won the championship, did whatever. I don't know that he's that much better than Gardner Minshew. I feel like that's not a crazy hot take. Now it's draft season, so, you know, he's like the second coming of Christ for a lot of people. But that's just a thought that I had the other day when I was listening about the moving up to 8 to get McCarthy. I was like, I feel like this guy's not that much better than Minshew. Maybe long term, yeah, because he's younger, higher ceiling, certainly, sure, but you know, that's my thought on that. Other than that, I'm excited for this draft. For 2 reasons. One, I'm excited to see what Telesco and AP and company whip up for us. And 2, because I'm excited to stop hearing about all these different things that might happen. Just let the dang thing happen. And then we can start talking about how good and how bad the picks were and what teams look great, what teams look terrible, and the biggest bonehead pick in the draft, all that fun stuff. But other than that, shout out to Raider Rob for coming in with a level-headed perspective. Gotta love that. I agree with you. We could definitely use some more of that. Just through and through, not just in Raider Nation, just everywhere. And yeah, I mean that's mostly it. Just the thought on McCarthy and Minshew being closer than a lot of people probably think or willing to admit. And yeah, we'll see what we see in 10 days' time, man. Appreciate the show. Appreciate the work you put in. This thing, 'cause it just popped in my head. I don't remember if you announced it on Locked On, but I remember for a while you were talking about the Locked On draft you did, the mock draft you did, and you kept, like, alluding to your pick. But I swear that I heard you announce the pick, like, the day the draft happened on Unnecessary Roughness. You announced that you went ahead and you took Terrion Arnold. I don't know if I'm just making it up. I don't know if there were 2 different mock drafts, but it had me confused for like a week and a half. I'm like, why do you keep beating around the bush with this one? Just popped in my head. Thought it was funny. All right, man. Appreciate the show. Appreciate the work. Love tuning in every day. Have a good one, man.
Thank you so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And I mean, I'm with you. I don't see McCarthy being a lot different than what the Raiders already have in the mix. I really don't. And, you know, once the draft is over, I'll be glad to stop talking about who they could potentially get and instead be talking on that Monday about who they did get, right? The Locked On draft that you mentioned, it is on the way. You may or may not have heard my pick. Wink, wink. Don't tell everybody. We weren't supposed to let the cat out of the bag. As a matter of fact, to tell you the truth, it's supposed to debut at 7 p.m. Eastern on Locked On Sports Today, the live stream. That's going to go on today. And if not, the show will be on the Locked On Raiders podcast on Thursday and the Locked On NFL draft page as well for every pick of round 1. So, yeah, Darren, don't tell anybody else, right? You know, hey, I ain't going to tell nobody else. Don't tell nobody else who my pick was, but you may or may not have heard it. Thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, text from Ohio Raider in the 419 says, my boy Q, great to hear the guys are back together again. With the signing of Cody Whitehair, man, the reviews are mixed on him. Not sure I have a lot of confidence with that Chi-Town offensive. I just hope that this does not stop us from getting our offensive lineman at 13. I have a big concern with the right side of the line, like most of us should. I know we need that quarterback, but, man, the big lineman is so important. Hoping to get Michael Penix with a trade up in the first. That's Ohio Raider in the 419. Thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. And, yeah, no, Cody Whitehair is at best going to be a guard. And I honestly think he's going to be a left guard, and that's only if the Raiders can't get one in the draft. Like, I think he's depth. I mean, his contract was, what, $2.5 million, a maximum of $3 million, 1 point something guaranteed. That's not a whole lot of money for a, 11-year vet in the league. I'm not worried about that. I think if he does start, he'll be on the left side. Dylan Parham will be on the right side, but at the guard position, and they'll bring in another tackle. I don't think that the signing of Whitehair has anything to do with the desire to go out and get a big-time tackle. The Raiders still definitely need that, and a guy like Fuaga might be still in play at 13, or whoever they feel like is the best offensive tackle when they're on the board in next week's draft. So I wouldn't worry about that, but thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Chris in San Diego. He's calling to talk about Gardner Minshew and Kenny Stabler and how there could be some similarities there. Here's Chris in San Diego.
Hey, this is Chris from San Diego. Long time listener, first time caller, but just wanted to put this out there. I just was listening to the show right now. I had to call, and someone mentioned Stabler, and I was listening to a YouTube video this morning just about Gardner Minshew and how he had actually met Stabler, and at some point during his the first part of his career. I don't know if you bring that up, you could find that, but it's kind of crazy how kind of reminiscent that might be. Just his attitude and things like that, and actually even his looks as well. But just something to coincide with that, could Gardner Minshew be our next Stabler? Good question for the show. But if you can find that video on YouTube, he does mention that he met Stabler in the stands at like an Alabama game or something. So just a little nugget to throw out there. Just jogged my memory right now, just listening to the show. Thank you so much, and see you, Raider Nation.
Chris, thanks so much for the call. And Minshew is intriguing, right? But it's hard to put a Stabler label on him, right? I mean, I get it. I understand, just kind of, who Minshew is and why someone would want to tie, Kenny Stabler's name to him. But that's a hard sell for me. Right now, I'm not saying that he's not worth the salt. I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback, but Kenny Stabler's got a gold jacket. Now, he got his gold jacket a little bit late. NFL, the Pro Football Hall of Fame committee, got him in the hall, obviously, after he passed, which was a damn shame. But I just can't put that on Minshew. Like, I don't look at Minshew and think that any time in his career he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Right? I don't think that he's ever going to play at a level where it's like, yeah, that guy has an argument to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I don't see that. But I mean, you never know. I mean, Gannon turned things around and really became a good quarterback when he arrived with the silver and black. So I could see that kind of, just a boost. But I can't put that snake, that title on Gardner Minshew. At least not right now, right? You got to show me a year or two under your belt that you really got something, that you're taking this Raiders team deep into the playoffs, if not further. Then maybe we'll have that conversation again, but I can't do it right now. But I do appreciate the contribution to the show. Thanks so much for that. Just got time for a couple more. How about this text from Big Dave from South Dakota? Hey, Q, it's Big Dave from South Dakota. I feel like we're going to go O-line or cornerback at 13. Then if Penix is available late in the first, we trade up from second. If he's not, then we keep building the trenches in secondary. Maybe get a quarterback mid-round. Thanks for the show. That's Big Dave from South Dakota. Short and sweet, and I'm okay with that. If they go O-line or cornerback at 13, I'm fine with that. I have no problem. And again, even as I mentioned in segment number 2, if they go defensive tackle, Byron Murphy at 13, I know it doesn't fill an immediate need and a hole that the Raiders have. I'd be okay with that as well. Still building the trenches, and I could see it maybe a Spencer Rattler a little bit later, a Jordan Travis a little bit later, someone like that a little bit later. I took the chance in the Locked On mock draft of, seeing if I should select Michael Penix at 13. I didn't. He didn't get selected at all in the first round. Does that mean he's not going to be around next Thursday? No. But, again, that was just what I did in our mock draft, and he was still around in round number 2. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a call from Wine Country Raider. He's calling to respond to the text about needing a snake-like quarterback and shares his thoughts on the subject. Here he is, Wine Country Raider.
What's up, Q? It's Wine Country Raider here. I'm just calling, kind of responding to the caller who is saying we need somebody who's who's like snake-like. And I agree. I mean, I think we need somebody who's really smart and confident. Obviously, we have guys in the draft, and there's guys who have the ability, but I agree. I think we need somebody who's confident coming to the line and seeing the defense and being like, hey, no, I think we need an audible out of this and run a different play. We need a guy who's confident in making those checks, confident in putting the team on his back and being like, hey, I know this is the call, but I see a different opening, and having the confidence to pull the trigger on that. That's what sets the tone. I think that's what separates, the good from the great. So I agree with him. I think Jaden Daniels showed a lot of confidence and playmaking abilities, and I just kind of honestly think he's kind of out of reach. The one thing I haven't really been on the J.J. McCarthy train, but I do think that he's a very confident and smart quarterback. So if for some reason, we pull the trigger on J.J. McCarthy, that's what I'd expect out of him. I'd expect him to be a very smart and confident player coming out. And if he's able to make those kind of calls at the line and stuff like that, and then I'll be all for it. So that's kind of my thoughts on that, and I appreciated that caller's thoughts on, kind of got me thinking. So shout out to Raider Nation, shout out to UQ, and just win, baby.
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough to call, anyone snake-like, right? As I mentioned earlier in this segment, there's a lot of, players that are going to come into the league that could be game changers and difference makers at the line of scrimmage. But you know how the game is right now. It's not really like a quarterback, especially a rookie, is going to go to the line of scrimmage. And yeah, I know this is the play call, but I'm going to do my own thing because this is what I see. Like, that's not really going to happen. Now, if they have a few different plays in their, call sheet that they have to choose from, that's one thing. But you also know that's not going to happen with a rookie right away either, right? That's going to happen with a chiseled vet, a guy that's been around the game for a while that the quarterback or the coach has trust in. So that's also just kind of how the game has changed. So, with that element, I wouldn't say that a Jaden Daniels or any other rookie could be that guy. But Jaden Daniels, in my opinion, could be a difference-making quarterback, a guy that could be the missing piece of that puzzle to really help take this team from where it's at right now that didn't quite get to the 9-10 mark in 2023 to get to the 10-11 mark in 2024, potentially. Again, it's all potential. You got to put it together and actually get it on the field. But I do think a guy like Jaden Daniels is worth a couple victories once he's out there. I just think he could be that much of a difference maker. But again, that's just me. Thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. It's great to hear from you. And we'd love to get some more feedback, right? 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. We'll have more calls and texts coming up on tomorrow's show. We'll have more news and notes, of course, and plenty of conversation. And who knows, maybe we're talking about the Locked On mock draft and what I was able to do at pick number 13. So all that is coming up on tomorrow's show, Raider Nation. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.